right, so on to our section looking at wedges. Now, when we're looking at wedges in this section, we're talking maybe those shots ranging from 50, 60 out to 100, 110 yards, depending on what you hit your wedges right now. And the first place we would start would be your yardages, right? So what are you averaging right now? So depending on what wedge setup you have, so if I was to look at my own wedge setup here, I have my pitching wedge that currently is a 46. And then as I go through my other wedges, I basically have a 50, a 56, and a 60. Now I have a yardage for each one of those swings in terms of a full swing. So roughly speaking, when I go and hit this full shot, for me, let's say the 56 here, when I hit this full out, it roughly goes in between about 100 and 110 for me, roughly speaking. And that's what I really want to establish first in terms of my wedge game. So no matter what wedge setup I have, what I want to first do is get out in the range and again, get 10 golf balls with each wedge and just swing normally, right? Don't try and do anything different. Don't try and hit it any better. Just swinging normally. And at those 10, I want to get an average of what distance I hit each of these wedges. Now you can do this on the driving range. You can do this on the golf course, wherever you feel most comfortable. But it's important just to get a rough average of what I hit each one of these. Now, that'll give you a yardage for each club, obviously, make you very aware of it. Where we can use that and where it's very important to understand is the total number that I get to the flag is always not, or not always in fact, the number I need to hit. And what I mean by that is, say for example, I have my wedge here and I said my 56 goes about 100, 110 yards. Now if I have 95 yards to the flag, okay, and I have nothing behind that green or nothing behind that pin, but I have water in front, there's nothing saying I can't hit this wedge and hit it 105 yards. Again, we know for every yard is about 3 feet. So if I hit my wedge from 105 yards and hit it to about, 30 feet, that's an absolutely fine result in terms of statistics, right? So again, just being very, very careful and very aware. Just because I have the exact yardage to the pin does not mean that I have to hit that yardage every time. So if I establish a yardage for each of my wedges, again, I have four. So I have my pitching wedge, my gap wedge at 50, my 56 sand wedge, and my 60-degree lob wedge. If I have one yardage for each of those clubs, that's 4 yardages ranging from between, let's say, 80 yards right the way through to 125. Now, if I want to get a little bit more specific, I can start working on the length of the swing or start feeling different yardages. But the first place we want to start is establishing how far I hit each of these clubs right now on an average. So that's the first session that you want to do with your wedges to get them dialed in. So once I've established the distance that I roughly average on each wedge, then we can get a little bit more specific about the actual technical aspects. So how can I get more efficient in creating those average numbers on a more repetitive basis? And then before we look at the setup on a wedge shot and how it differs from a full swing. Now, number one, when I look at wedges, I like to use the term finesse because this really is a finesse shot, right? For most of the part when I'm hitting kind of 5-iron, 6-iron, there's a little bit more speed in the system. I'm trying to max it out even though I have a set number. When we get into the wedges, it's very much more particular about that yardage. So when I'm looking at how I set up for wedges, it's really going to be with that term, that under kind of, and that headline of finesse. So here's what I like to see. So when I'm setting up for my wedge shots, I like to see the ball more opposite the sternum. Now you'll notice I'm not going to use the term or reference where the feet are because I can have players that stands at different widths, and for me it's more representative of where the sternum is, where that low point of that golf club is going to take place. Now we know the low point roughly happens opposite lead armpit, so the lowest part of my swing is opposite lead armpit. So if I want wedges and I want to hit down on these maybe 4 or 5 degrees depending on what you like to do, that ball is going to be opposite sternum. So I'm going to have that ball opposite my sternum when I set up. Now the other little kind of very much kind of adaptation you could say that I use in wedges is I actually have this left foot flare out a little bit more. So that left foot is pointing out to the left hand side of me a little bit more. And I'm also going to actually move my stance a little bit more open. Now, why I use my stance or why I move my stance a little bit more open can get a little bit complicated in terms of what's occurring. But let's just say when I hit down on a golf ball, so as that club travels down into the ground, that actually pushes the path of the golf club a little bit to the right. So as the more I swing down with this club, the path is traveling a bit further right. So to offset that, to offset the path traveling further to the right, I'm actually going to stand a little bit to the left as a right-handed golfer. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense in terms of what we're doing. So these nice little simple adjustments. So again, going from where we standardly are, ball kind of going to be in the middle for our wedge shots. I'm going to have that left foot flared out a little bit, pulled a little bit back, and that's really me now into my wedge position. I'm not really changing my pressure or my weight shift at the moment. Now in this backswing, that's when things could technically change a little bit. Again, finesse-wise, as I go back, I really don't want to feel that I'm pushing into my trail side as much as I normally would. I'm going to feel a little bit more centered over this golf ball. So less weight shift, less pressure going away from golf ball or away from target, and feeling like I'm a little bit more centered in backswing. And then as I work down, again, more finesse. So using rotation of the bigger muscles in the body to actually control this shot, as opposed to letting those hands and kind of wrists accelerate a little bit more to create more speed. I want a constant speed, right? That's really my goal. So when I get set up, ball in the middle, have that lead foot flared out, pull back a little bit. That creates a little bit of a leftward alignment, or kind of in terms of leftward being as a right-handed golfer. And then from there, as I said, I'm not really going to have a lot of shift back here. I'm going to more or less feel like I stay over the golf ball. And as I work down, those bigger muscles, kind of like the core, the trunk, the chest, the rib cage, really doing all the work on the way through. So if I get it set up here, from here, and again, more the bigger muscles moving through. So that's really in terms of the setup, the slight little adjustments I make for wedges. Now, everybody's going to be different. People like to have the ball further back, perhaps. That's absolutely fine. These are just more suggestions in terms of a platform to work from. If you feel like you're not getting through your wedges, or you feel like a little stuck with wedges, feel like wedges are overdrawing, these little things might make the necessary adjustments to get those balls a little bit straighter. But as we're looking at wedges, that's really as a platform, a baseline of setup, what I'd like to see. So let's look at the technical side and some drills or tasks you can use to improve your wedge game. Now I've mentioned really at the center of how a wedge kind of swing or action should work for me is using those bigger muscles to power the golf swing. For a lot of players that struggle with wedges, generally speaking, they have a tendency to lean back and try to help the ball up in the air, or use their hands excessively when the body or the pivot slows down. So how do we really work on those things? So we've got a couple of drills that we can go through. So let's get off and start it with the first one. So the first drill is really what I call a trail arm bracket drill. And what I would do is I get set up, and we're just going to do it in a practice swing, rehearsal swing first. I would get set up here, and what I would do then is actually just get my lead hand, my left hand, and just put it on my trail arm and just hold it and brace it against my rib cage. And as I go back and travel through, that lead, or that trail arm, excuse me, has to stay against my rib cage. So I'm really using, as we mentioned before, the upper section here, the bigger muscles, to maneuver this golf club or move this golf club through impact and through this action. So again, where we might have maybe those players with wedges who struggle with wedges, maybe getting a little bit active with the hands, the body not really turning, the right arm kind of extending, moving off the body, those kind of motions that really enact a lot of separate or individual face and wrist movement that we don't want. That's changing lofts, right? That's going to be really hard to control. So we get set up, get into our posture and our position, lead hand comes off, holds that trail arm against my rib cage, and as I go back and through, really feeling like that turns the body all the way through. So the way I'd work this would be perhaps a couple of those shots, not really minding where I hit this right now, just getting the sensation of it. And then just freeing it up and going back to two hands on the golf club, and can I enact that same sensation? Okay, so again, ball a little bit more in the middle there, left foot flared out a little bit, and just feeling as I go through that right side, that upper arm, is staying closer to my rib cage as I rotate through. So that trail arm bracket drill, a nice one for encouraging more of those bigger muscles in that wedge action. So drill 2 is really a very popular one. It's very well known. It's just a towel drill. So what we're going to do is just get a towel here, and I just simply put one end underneath my lead armpit, the other underneath my trail armpit, and it just kind of creates that nice connection between the upper arm, so the triceps, okay, my elbows and my hands. So what that's really going to create as I go back and through is that nice rotation of the body, really, as we said, transporting the handle through the golf shot. Now, the big advantage of this one is obviously you can hit full shots with it, so we can kind of very much get set up straight away and just go back and just turn through and just really feel that we're rotating through those shots. So again, it's really key that we're getting that nice sensation of connection with the arms and the body swing. So you can see feeling in that position as I go back, that nice rotation in the body, the arms moving forward, and then simply just removing the towel on that third shot and just saying, okay, well, can I transfer that kind of nice sensation? So as I go back, feeling that nice turn, everything moving together. So a really, really nice sensation is that towel drill. Now, the one little added note of caution when working on any drill that places objects underneath arms or etc. can be the compression versus connection. So if I put this kind of towel underneath here one more time, and I would just say, okay, well, what I want to do is connect, right? So this is connection here. Compression is when I squeeze that towel in place. Okay, and that's really what I don't want to do. So just a note of caution when I'm doing this, just make sure there's a nice connection between the towel and the chest. And then as I go back again, that nice rotation of the upper body, the muscles, the big kind of motions, the big kind of segments of the body. And then again, that nice rotation all the way through. But a really, really nice drill for feeling that connection in wedge game. Again, where we want to stay away from is individualistic or separate movement of the club face, the hands, the wrists, the loft. That can be very challenging in creating a consistent distance when we're working on these wedges.